My brother Tony and I had many friends in our neighborhood, and since we had a backyard that was like a mini jungle with large tall trees of every description, including a number of exotic fruit trees such as 2 kinds of guavas, what we called white lady and pink lady, cherry, star apples, dungs, jamun, and a large glamour tree. We would spend hours in there eating from every tree as we came upon it. Whether the fruits were ripe or green, we ate the lot. Once we found an old rusting carcass of a car in the overgrown bush on the vacant lot next to our home. We decided that if there were no holes in the roof, we would cut it off and turn it upside down and use it as a boat in the water-filled trenches that lined every street in Georgetown at the time. It was a sight to behold, as around 10 of us, none older than 10 years old, spent an entire day removing the vines from around the car, and with stones we were hitting the rusty parts to flake off the rust to see if there were any holes in it. At the end of the day, we were quite satisfied that it was perfect for our purpose, and planned to meet the next day armed with an hacksaw blade to begin cutting off the roof. The next 2 days found us cutting the 4 sections with one hacksaw blade amongst us. We took turns, as it was quite a task, but when we had finally finished, we all held on to a part of it, hoisted it aloft, and solemnly walked with it to an open area where we could put it down and examine our handiwork. It was self-congratulations all around, and with boisterous laughter and playful frolicking, we lifted it again and proceeded to the road, where we rested it onto the embankment and gingerly slid it into the water. The excited cheers that followed alerted everyone to the fact that it actually floated. And one by one we stepped into our boat. It could only take 4 of us to remain afloat, so we spent the next half an hour deciding who would go first. It was decided that the 3 older boys, which included me, together with the boy who brought the hacksaw blade, a 7-year-old named Joseph, would be among the first. We had 2 long sticks, or paddles as we called them, amongst us, and with which we used to feel the bottom of the trench. And by pushing on these sticks, the boat would move forward. Now, every house on the street had their own bridge over the trench that led from the road into their respective yards. So after only a few yards of sailing, we would encounter the neighbor's bridge, which was so close to the water that we couldn't go under. So we would drag the boat out of the water and relaunch it on the other side, and so forth at every house on the street. In our excitement, we had forgotten that no one lived on the opposite side of the street, as there was an old abandoned colonial horse stables there, and so had no bridges across the trench. It was not until much later that we made this discovery, and thereupon transferred the boat to the other side. We had many days of fun, just sailing up and down in the trench at the side of the road opposite our home that year. It was Joseph's older brother, Baby Boy, so called on account of his face uncannily resembling that of a baby, despite he being about 16 or 17 years old, who took us very far into the back dam, as far as the Lamaha Canal. Built over 200 years ago, it held fresh water for the city. Our frequent journeys there took us a few hours, as we would find the occasional large fruit tree, where we would linger, eating to our heart's content. Walking with bare feet on the decaying leaves would sometimes disturb a lizard or other creature, which would cause us to flee in panic, only to regroup later and continue our journey. Since the trees were so dense, we couldn't see the sky. It was darkened and eerily quiet, and oh so cool, since the sun could not penetrate the treetops that formed the solid wall against the sky. The first time I reached the Lamaha Canal, it was a big deal, as most of my friends had never gone that far, and so was a badge of honor for me for a long time. I remember it quite vividly, as it was there that I learned to swim. Baby Boy had lifted me up, kicking and screaming, and threw me into the Lamaha Canal, saying that I must swim across to the other side. To this day, I don't know how I got across, but I do remember later when it was time to do it all over again to get back. This time, we were all in the water, and I was more confident that if something happened, someone would be near me to help. I did it on my own and never looked back since. Holidays were a special time for us then, and whether it was a national or religious holiday, such as the Hindus' Holi or Pagwa, the Muslims' Eid ul-Fitr, the Christians' Easter or Christmas, all and sundry took part and celebrated together. It never occurred to us that this or that festival belonged to the other group, and so we couldn't take part. We considered all festivals a time to make merry, and we sure did have rollicking times with our friends. I guess we must have seen our commonality rather than our differences then. Two of these holidays hold a very special place in my heart, Easter and Christmas. Easter was the only time of the year that we flew kites. It harkens back to a religious significance of the resurrection of Christ. Christ rising up to heaven, or so I was told. In the weeks leading up to Easter Monday, kites would begin to make their appearance in the sky, and the closer it got to Easter, the more kites would be in the air. Everyone knew how to make a kite, from the cadiole punch, which was made from a page torn from an exercise book or a folio pad, to regular kites made with slithers of bamboo and covered with colored wrapping paper, to those made with colored cellophane sheets. Sometimes each section would have a different color. The square box kites were rare and not popular at all. For glue, we would very rarely use store-bought glue. Instead, we used the berries from the glamour cherry tree, which had a sticky and glue-like consistency. These we would also eat. Failure to acquire these glamour cherries meant that we would have to resort to the tried and tested baking flour with a little water to form a paste.